Hey, what's going on, Soul Preachers? Got a real heavy conversation to have today. For the last 3 days, I've been doing some research on something that I've been seeing in social media that everybody's talking about. It's a good thing that everybody's talking about it, but it's pretty disturbing. And before I talked about it, I wanted to have my facts straight because I didn't want to get on here with disinformation or misinformation. And this is something that we got to talk about and we got to do something about, not just talk about it. And it's something that's particularly happened down in Mississippi and across southern states we shouldn't have to keep asking questions about, but black people are still being found hanging. Now, hear me good. I didn't say that they were lynched. I didn't say that they were murdered. Some of these deaths have officially been ruled suicide. But here's what I am saying. They were found hanging. And given the history of black people in America, that fact alone deserves our attention. Let's look at some names. We got Renard Johnson, 17 years old, found in Mississippi back in 2000. We got Nick Naylor, who was 23 years old, found in Mississippi, hanging in 2003. We have Roy Veal, who was 55 years old in Mississippi in 2004. Frederick Jermaine Carter, who was 26 years old in Mississippi in 2010. Otis Bird, who was 54, goddamn Mississippi, 2015. Philip Carroll, 22 in Mississippi, 2017. DeAndre Hopkins, 35 in Mississippi, 2019. Then the names start getting closer. Javion McGee, who was 21, North Carolina in 2024. Denoris Richardson, who was 39, Alabama in 2024. Trevante Schubert Helton, Georgia, 2024. These are all hangings, people. DeMartravion Reed, 21, Mississippi, just last year. And Kyle Bassinger, who was 21 in Georgia. And now we have Miss Tasia Fortune, a young black woman found hanging from a tree behind a vacant house in Jackson, Mississippi, whose cause of death and the manner of her death has yet to be publicly determined as of me recording this now. And I got questions, not accusations. I got questions. Questions are precisely what you ask when you don't know. And that's the problem. We don't know. Imagine being a mother who's been told that her child has been found hanging from a tree. Through her immense grief, her first question is how and where. And if the answer is essentially we don't know yet, then don't tell the family to calm down. Don't tell black people that they're being paranoid. Don't tell us that the history has nothing to do with that image because it automatically sends chills through our bodies. America taught black people what a body hanging from a tree could mean. We didn't imagine that association. American history did. Mississippi has history there. Because here's where the story gets even worse. Mississippi has had a forensic accountability problem for years. Mississippi didn't even have a sitting state medical examiner. And during part of the period that I mentioned earlier, there's a pathologist named Dr. Stephen Hain who reportedly worked on 80 cases, 80 autopsies, despite not having been board certified as a forensic pathologist. So his forensic work, along with a forensic dentist by the name of Michael West, was then later implicated in cases involving innocent men who were wrongly convicted. That is a problem. If your work has been called into question and proven, then that means now you have to open up all of your cases. And eventually, Mississippi severed ties with them. And when it did, officials estimated that there were hundreds of unfinished autopsy reports. Think about that, people. So when somebody says, trust the system, my response is, what system? You mean the system that has already documented its own failures? People, that's not conspiracy, that's history. And history doesn't prove that all medical examiners in the South are corrupt. That's not the point here. But past institutional failure absolutely requires present scrutiny. And we've seen other failures. Let me tell you about Dexter Wade. In March of 23, Dexter Wade was struck and killed by a Jackson Police Department vehicle driven by an off-duty Jackson police corporal. His mother had been looking for him. She reported her son missing. Meanwhile, the authorities already knew what happened to Dexter because they knew who he was. They already knew about his family. And before his mother ever learned that Dexter was dead, he was buried in a cemetery for the unknown. Think about that. Your child is missing. You're looking for him. You're asking the police to help you find him. And the very system that you're asking for assistance has already processed his body and then buried him. So here's the question. What's the name of the officer that was driving the truck that killed him? Years later, the Jackson Police Department still has not publicly identified that officer. And I have done my research, y'all, over the past 3 days. There is no public record of whether he was criminally convicted, tried, suspended, or even connected to Dexter's death. So if an accident is an accident, then why all the secrecy? If it was an accident, then say his name. Release the investigative findings. Explain what happened. Transparency should be the right of every American citizen. And Dexter's case exposed something even bigger. He wasn't the only person buried without his family knowing. Multiple families discovered that their loved ones had been buried without proper notification. Mississippi. So when black families say we want an independent investigation, don't automatically call them paranoid or claim black fatigue. And then I found Willie Jones Jr. Willie Andrew Jones Jr. was 21 years old. February of 2018, he was found hanging from a pecan tree in the yard of his white girlfriend's family down in Scotts County, Mississippi. And according to the investigative documents that was reviewed by the Washington Post, the authorities arrived, spent about 40 minutes, and then declared the body a suicide. 40 minutes. But here's where it gets really stupid. Because when I went looking at the actual forensic findings, the Mississippi State Medical Examiner didn't classify Willie's death as a suicide. The autopsy actually listed his cause of death as ligature strangulation, and then the manner of death as undetermined. Undetermined. So I have a very simple question. How does undetermined become suicide? Before the actual ME looks at the body. Who made that call? And on what evidence? Because, see, the medical examiner and the police are saying two different things. Willie's family didn't accept the suicide conclusion, as they shouldn't have, and they eventually filed for a wrongful death lawsuit against the stepfather of Willie's girlfriend. That man didn't defend the lawsuit, so the court ordered a default judgment and awarded Willie's family $11 million. So let's be responsible. Okay, the default judgment is not the same thing as a criminal conviction. Nobody stood trial, and nobody was found guilty of murdering Willie Jones. But years later, independent forensic pathologist, the GOAT, Michael Baden, reviewed the evidence and reached a dramatically different conclusion from law enforcement. His opinion was that Willie had first been strangled with a belt around his neck. He lost consciousness, and then his unconscious body was hung from a tree. Again, this is the GOAT of all forensic pathologists. But how in the world does a case with that level of disagreement simply disappear from national consciousness? The police said suicide, the state ME said undetermined, and the GOAT of all GOATs said that the evidence showed that somebody else was involved. And years later, we're still asking questions. What the hell happened to Willie Jones Jr.? This is exactly what I'm talking about, people. See, I don't need conspiracy. We don't need exaggeration. And conspiracy posts are usually only about clickbait. They're not trying to solve nothing. So here's the tough part about what I'm saying. Suicide is real. Black people commit suicide too. And those families deserve compassion, man. Not to have their loved ones used as political fodder for a race war, because I got a sneaking suspicion that this is where that's trying to go. A suicide ruling should be the conclusion of an investigation, not the substitute for one, especially when somebody is found hanging from a tree publicly, because America once made hanging one of the most recognizable symbols of racial terror. It was a documented Sunday pastime that families, good Christian white folk in the South, they would bring their children and their wives in lawn chairs and would then help themselves to physical souvenirs. I'm not making this up. It's documented. All right, Marcus, you upset. What do we do now? Here's my call to action. We want names. We want dates. Counties, investigating agencies, coroners, their names, medical examiners, cause of death, manner of death, autopsy statuses, federal involvement, case statuses, independent autopsies if one exists, and when legally possible, the evidence supporting the final determination. Put it all in one place. Because right now, we have to search newspaper archives, police statements, family interviews. They're all over the place just to figure out how many black people have been found hanging. Because these are human beings, people, and their deaths have questions that need to be answered. So yeah, we want to say their names. The problem is names are being added, and we got to do something about it instead of just looking at social media saying, oh man, that's crazy. There's something that happens with social media where we feel like we've done our job because we hit like or we comment. We got to do more than hit like and comment. We got to start a conversation that's so vast, platforms that are so vast that agencies actually do something. Because after everything this country has done with ropes, trees, and black bodies, a black person hanging from a tree should never become normalized. Their families deserve the truth. We deserve the truth. And until we have it, we need to keep on asking questions and making sure that we get the answers. All right, now, let's keep growing and knowing. And by any means necessary, be safe and protect yourself.
Alabama's got me so upset. Tennessee made me lose my rest. And everybody knows about Mississippi gone down. Alabama's got me so upset. Tennessee made me lose my rest. Everybody knows